the work that I do, and you said to people in this room, I want you to stand with my community. I want you to stand with my people because I'm standing here with you, right? You heard him say that?
Yeah.
So let's talk about that a little bit. Before I get there, I want to also say that there's a quote that I have in my office, and this quote is very meaningful to me, and I think I want you to listen to it, hear it, absorb it, and let it go directly into your heart. It's a quote by an Aboriginal woman from Australia. Her name is Leela Watson. And she says, if you have come here to help me, then you are wasting your time. But if you have come here because you believe that your liberation is bound up with mine, then let us work together. That is the premise, sisters and brothers, of how we need to be working in solidarity around the issues that are impacting our communities. So let's start talking about where we're at right now. I'm talking to the Muslims, and I think hopefully, other than the couple of informants that are in the room, we'll put those to the side for a second. Everyone else who's not Muslim in this room is an ally to our community, so I welcome you here. And I think you're going to be part of what I'm calling a family conversation that I want to have with my Muslim sisters and brothers in this room. You know, I stand before you here today first and foremost, unapologetically Muslim. I'm so proud to be Muslim. I'm more proud today to be Muslim than I was like 20 years ago. I'm also unapologetically Palestinian American. I'm so proud of being Palestinian, and being Palestinian has informed most of the justice work that I do. And I believe that the blood that runs through my veins is the blood of a resilient and strong people. And I hope that I'm honoring them and their work to free Palestine. So, why do I say I'm unapologetically Muslim? Because I think that that's not the general consensus in the Muslim community right now. I think we're too busy walking around apologizing for who we are every moment that we get. Sisters and brothers, we have nothing to apologize for. We have everything to be proud for, and we need to start acting like we're proud to be Muslim in the United States of America. I think a lot of reasons why people in the Muslim community think that we have to apologize for who we are. You know, we're always running around trying to like condemn things because, you know, that's just how the world works for us right now. And why our young people are so uncertain. They're always like, oh my God, if Donald Trump becomes president, what are we gonna do? And I think the reason why there's so much uncertainty is because we are not teaching our young people what their history is in the United States of America. Sisters and brothers, we live in a country that never existed without Islam. Our faith has been on the shores of this nation before this nation was called the United States of America. I did research on Islam in America, and I found out that in the 1500s, 200 galley slaves came here from North Africa. They were Turks and Moors. Turks and Moors from North Africa. And they helped build the first English colony called Roanoke Colony, which many of you know now is the coast of North Carolina. And then decades later, we went to Africa and we uprooted people, stole their culture, took them from their families and from their land, and we brought millions of African slaves to the United States of America. About 25% of those slaves were Muslim. Some of the most educated, some of whom were fluent in Arabic, some of whom were scholars of Islam. And we brought them here to the United States of America as slaves. Many of them had to practice Islam in hiding. And it is because of them and their legacy and their risk that they took to maintain their faith is why we can be Muslim in America in 2016. Sisters and brothers, our roots are so deep in this country. Our lineage goes way back in this country. We have to start acting like we belong here, sisters and brothers. This is our country too, and we're not acting like we belong here. So, sisters and brothers, what is going to ground us in this country is understanding our history. There are people out here that wake up every morning to propagate that Islam is some foreign entity, that Islam belongs on some other part of the world, that you belong on some other part of the world. Guess what, sisters and brothers? Just like Black history is American history, Islam is American history. And you need to own that, and you need to hold that, and you need to understand that, because knowing our history is going to give us the courage to continue being Muslim in America. Islamophobia. People always say, Sister Linda, how are we gonna address this Islamophobia that keeps happening in our community? Increase in hate crimes, all these people talking about us and talking about us without us, and all the rhetoric that we're hearing from the presidential candidates. How do we address that? Some Muslims think it's grabbing some pamphlets about Islam and standing on a street corner, thinking that someone is going to be moved by your deed, by your religion, by reading something in a pamphlet. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever been moved by reading something on a piece of paper? I don't know about other people, I'm not moved by that. I am moved by experience. I am moved by interactions. I'm moved by human beings. Oftentimes we hear people in our community describing Islam as a religion of peace. Sisters and brothers, you're not adding anything to the conversation by saying Islam is a religion of peace. I believe all religions are religions of peace. So nothing new. But what I don't hear people talking about that attracts me to Islam, that makes me proud to be a Muslim, is that Islam is a religion of justice. At the core of Islam is justice. And justice in Islam is not just us. Nowhere in our history of Islam since the days of its founding by our Prophet has ever there been a time where our Prophet was like, we're only going to stand with the poor Muslims, just the marginalized Muslims. Sisters and brothers, Islam has always been a religion of justice and equality for all people. Now, oftentimes we hear about, people tell you about Martin Luther King, right? Martin Luther King, the civil rights leader. They talk to you about my mentor and hero. He mentors me through his grave, Malcolm X, right? Heroes. But did you know that 1,400 years before there was ever a Malcolm X and a Martin Luther King, you had your own hero, your own human rights activist, racial justice activist, environmental justice activist, a man who cared about the environment and cared about animal rights, a feminist in his own right, and that was our Prophet Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. 2 years ago, 3 friends of mine, Alicia Garza, Opal, and Patrice Cullors, started a hashtag called Black Lives Matter. Sisters and brothers, you follow a faith where Black lives always mattered. Your Prophet uplifted Black Muslims, gave them leadership positions, removed them from slavery. He was the one, and many of you know this hadith, and I'm not a scholar, I'm not standing up here trying to preach and act like I'm an imam, but I am moved by these stories. Your Prophet said that, alayhi salatu that an Arab is not more superior than a white person is not more superior than a Black person. This is something that was narrated 1,400 years ago. So your religion is very clear about what it means to be a social justice activist. And oftentimes we go to these Sunday schools and we go to the Friday prayers and we hear these lectures and we are being taught the seerah of the Prophet, which for folks who are not, don't speak Arabic, seerah of the Prophet is the life of the Prophet. Are we emulating the life of the Prophet? Are we following in the life of our Prophet, our racial justice activists, our human rights activists, our feminists, our man that stood up for all marginalized people? We talk about Islamophobia, sisters and brothers, but the first victim of Islamophobia was your Prophet, alayhi salatu wasalam. Trash was thrown at him. He was assaulted, sisters and brothers. And throughout all the adversities that he went through, all the challenging, the obstacles, people called him a magician, a liar. He was a cheater, right? Then what happened? I don't know how he did it, but somehow, even through all of that, he was able to convert millions of people across the Arab Peninsula to become Muslim. And we're over here trying to act like we're not proud to be Muslim, like we're retreated, like Islamophobia is supposed to stop us from being who we are. That means we lost deen, sisters and brothers. We lost connection to who we are and what our faith is. Sisters and brothers, I was saying this just a few minutes ago that a lot of people think that the way you're going to teach people about Islam is you're going to sit them down and be like, this is what I believe. I pray this many times a day, I fast, we do pilgrimage, all the stuff that we do. That's nice. That might be some trivia for some people to know. But what really moves people after they leave you? Who cares how many times you pray? Seriously. Who cares that you fast for 30 days in Ramadan? That's not something for people to celebrate with you. That's a personal relationship that you have with God. That has nothing to do with the people you're trying to educate. What's more important to me about what people know about Islam is how you make them feel as Muslims. There was a black woman poet that I'm sure many of you have read and loved, Sister Maya Angelou, may she rest in peace. She said something, I'm going to paraphrase, and she said, it's not about the words, it's about how you make people feel. See, you might leave here today and you may forget every word that we all said up here. Literally. That happens, we got lives, we're going to go home, we got homework, we got to study, things happen, we forget. But I guarantee you, sisters and brothers, you won't forget how people up here made you feel. You don't forget interactions with people. People made you feel bad, empowered, ashamed. Whatever the feeling is, you will remember how people made you feel. So I'm going to tell you a story. Many of you heard about this brother, grandfather, brother, member of our New York City community, Eric Garner. Eric Garner was being harassed by the New York Police Department quite often. And one day, the New York Police Department and the officers took him down to the ground. He was a big guy. And one officer named Daniel Pantaleo started choking Eric Garner. And Eric Garner, in that video, and it was recorded, sisters and brothers, we all watched that video. In that video, Eric Garner asked to breathe 11 times in that video, sisters and brothers. He continued to call out for his breath. And that police officer, Daniel Pantaleo, didn't have no mercy, no rahmah in his heart to let go of Eric Garner's neck until we lost Eric Garner. And that officer, Daniel Pantaleo, still has a job at the New York Police Department. And not only does Eric Garner have a job at the New York Police Department, he has private security paid for by my taxpayer dollars because he's afraid for his life. So a year later, when Daniel Pantaleo was not indicted for his murder of Eric Garner, people in New York City rose up. It was enough, sisters and brothers. We have people in our streets unarmed being killed by law enforcement and no one seems to be held accountable for that. That's not right, sisters and brothers. It's wrong. You can't just sit back and let that happen. So a few months later, it was about 2 months after that, as part of a group called the Justice League, we organized with predominantly young Black and Latinos. And these young people came to me and another sister named Tamika Mallory, another sister named Carmen Perez. Tamika Mallory is African American, Carmen Perez is Chicana, and I'm Palestinian Muslim. And these kids were like, look, we want to do something drastic, something big. I was like, what are you talking about? They said, nobody cares about us. They're killing us out in the streets. Ramali Graham and story after story. You know the names, And I said, what do you want to do? They said, we want to march from New York City to Washington, D.C. I said, do you know that New York City is 5 states away from Washington, D.C.? Do you know that it's 250 miles? They said, we don't care. Maybe somebody will listen to us. Maybe someone will say, we're so crazy. Maybe they'll pay attention to us. Maybe the crazy part is what's going to make them pay attention to us. Sisters and brothers, I and Tamika and Carmen, we're in no position to tell these young people no. We said, all right, we're going to march from New York City to Washington, D.C. On April 13th, which was only the anniversary of our march was only 2 days ago. We started in Staten Island where Brother Eric Garner was killed. And we went up Route 1 all the way down to Washington, D.C. About 100 of us. 6 of the 100 were Muslim. There were 3 Black Muslims. There was 1 Syrian, 1 Iranian, and then there was me, Palestinian. Now, I was the co-chair of the march. So I thought to myself, this is my chance. How am I going to let these sisters and brothers experience me? How was I going to do that? How was I going to get them to experience my religion, my community, and what I truly stand for? So you know how it is in the community. In any community, you call up your uncle, your father, this one, he connects you to that one. And eventually I found myself at this mosque in Philadelphia called Al-Hidayah Center, the Gift. This masjid is run by Palestinians. The imam called him up. I said, "Salam alaikum, brother." Actually, it was a connection to a brother from CARE Philadelphia chapter. And I said, "Look," I said, "we're doing a march. And this is a march to bring awareness around police brutality, around the killing of unarmed Black and Latinos, and mostly people of color. And I'm marching with these young people. We're about 100 people. How big is your mosque? Can we come sleep over one night?" And this brother said, "Sister, this is your house. You and your friends are welcome at our mosque." So we marched, and the third or fourth day we get to Philadelphia, a tour bus comes and picks us up because this mosque was 25 miles outside of the route. And we get to this mosque, and we get to the parking lot, and the imam and all his board members and the wives and everybody's there. So beautiful, with beautiful smiles. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome, sisters and brothers. This is your house. We are honored to have you here. Please come. We walk into the masjid. These beautiful Muslims cook this elaborate meal for us. Even the imam had an apron on, serving food to the people. And then about 11 o'clock at night, the young people come and knock on my door in the sister section. Young brothers, "Sister Linda, where are the people from the mosque?" I said, "What do you mean?" They said, "I don't know, we don't see them." I said, "Well, it's 11 o'clock. They probably went home. Got family." They said, "Wait a minute, what do you mean? You mean to tell me that this beautiful mosque right here, that this imam and those people left 100 strangers that they never met in their life, and they just left us up in here? That's it?" I said, "Did you hear the imam when you first, what did the imam say to you when you first got here?" He said, "Assalamu alaikum." I said, "Yeah, after that." He said, "This is your house." See, how it works in the Muslim community is that this house that you are in is a house of God. This doesn't belong to the imam or to the board members or to the community. This is a house of God. And all of you are God's creations, which means that this is your house. And the security of this mosque is in your hands until those people from the mosque come back in the morning. You know how empowered those young people felt? You know how moved they were? They started locking doors and they were sleeping rooms. It was amazing. And then at about 5:30 in the morning, the people come back. And then the imam goes and he's calling prayer, through the loudspeakers, and everybody hears it. Same kids come knocking on my door. They were like, "Sister, what's all that? What's going on?" I said, "That's a call to prayer." They said, "Wow, I never felt so peaceful inside. What a beautiful sound." I said, "Yeah, that's beautiful, isn't it?" We get up, we pack our stuff, we go downstairs into the cafeteria, the same beautiful faces we met the day before. Breakfast, eat breakfast, and then we're leaving, and I see these guys with these boxes, and I'm like, "What's going on?" Cases of water, they had a big box of bananas and tangerines, and they were like, "This is for your journey." And the imam said, "I'm praying for you." He said, "I'm praying for your journey, for you to arrive at your destination in safety, and that God watches over you for every step that you take to where you need to go." It was so moving, sisters and brothers. It's so beautiful. And as we continued our march down to Washington, D.C., do you know how many times those young people asked me questions about my religion? Do you know who the staunchest supporters of our community are going to be? You know, the people who are going to stand up for us when things happen, it's going to be those 100 young people. Those people are not going to stand for people speaking up against our community because they experience the hospitality, the compassion, and the love and the justice of our community, sisters and brothers. This is how you do da'wah, and this is how you teach people about what Islam is and what we stand for as a community. White allies. Did people hear about that? So let's clarify some things a little bit. Clarify something for you. Muslims, all Muslims, you're not a white ally. I don't care how light your skin is. And I'm going to tell you why you're not a white ally. Because sisters and brothers, 1/3 of the American Muslim community is African American, Black sisters and brothers. So when you get out in a rally because an unarmed boy in your community was shot down by a police officer, you ain't no white ally. You out here marching first and foremost for your own sisters and brothers who got to be Black and Muslim in 2016. So you have to understand what your role is as a Muslim. Understanding that these issues of police brutality, of mass incarceration are directly impacting our community. Just because it ain't directly impacting you, unless you don't think you're part of the larger Muslim community, which is a whole other situation we need to talk about, these are absolutely 100% quote Muslim issues. Sisters and brothers, when I was sitting in New York City, and I heard about a 12-year-old boy playing with a toy gun in a park in Cleveland, Ohio, get shot down, not even 2 seconds after police cars show up. His sister wasn't allowed to touch him, no EMTs to revive that baby. And the police officer who shot him still hasn't been held accountable. You know what, sisters and brothers, let me tell you something. Shame on you. Shame on us. Shame on our country to allow this to happen to a little boy and no one is held accountable. You know what that says, sisters and brothers? That you opened the door for that to happen to one of our children. That boy, Tamir Rice, he's our son. He's my son. Actually, my son's name is Tamir, Tamir. It's spelled the same. And when I was on Twitter and I saw Justice for Tamir, that's my son's name. It could easily be my child. My child could be in a park playing basketball like he does with his friends, and something can happen there and my son could be shot down to the ground. Do I gotta wait for only the Palestinian community to come stand up for my child? I want everybody to stand up for my child. I want everybody to say that Tamir Rice, Tamir Jude, which is my son, is your son. We cannot be and have selective outrage and work on selective justice, sisters and brothers. If justice for you ain't everybody, then you are not working for justice, sisters and brothers. Also Muslims for a second. I've been kind of talking to you, but now I want to talk. Now I'm going to get real. Like, that wasn't real yet. Sisters and brothers, we have a problem. We have this problem where we think that we have to conform who we are, change our message around, because we want to try to make some folks feel comfortable. That's the opposite of what I do for a living. Sisters and brothers, as Muslims, as Americans, as human beings, we have one job and one job only, and that's to speak the truth. Nothing but the truth. What I want you to understand is that when you speak the truth and someone feels comfortable, that's not on you. That's on the person that's uncomfortable. Let them sit with their discomfort. There's a reason why they are uncomfortable with what you are saying. So don't beat around and be like, okay, I don't want to offend this one, I don't want to offend that one. I don't care about who you're offending. You want to stand up for justice for Palestinians, you want to stand up for justice for Black people, for undocumented immigrants, you got to speak the truth, sisters and brothers. And the reason why we are in the situation that we are in is because we're not speaking the truth, and we also don't know who our friends are. So let me give you an example. We have these armed militias that come and stand in front of the masajid, and we've seen them. Have you seen them in places like Arizona? They come with AK-47s because, open carry space. They stand in front of the masjid trying to intimidate our worshipers that go to the masjid. So what do some Muslims say? MashaAllah, that's the time to do da'wah. Time to go outside. It's hot outside in Arizona. We got, maybe some ice water or something, maybe some cupcakes. Maybe we hand them each a rose. That will surely soften their hearts. Sisters and brothers, I'm not even mad. But let me tell you where the hypocrisy comes in. So you got resources, because I don't be having resources like that. So you got resources and time to invest in people who have already made up their mind about you, sisters and brothers. But then you don't have the same time to go down the street when there's a Mexican mother, right, whose husband's about to get deported just for being undocumented. And there's a child crying for their mother. You got time to talk to white supremacists in front of your mosque, but you probably don't know the Black church around the corner from your mosque. Sisters and brothers, people watch our community. They see our inconsistencies. It's very clear to people who we are and who we want to be friends with, and when we message who we're trying to impress. So when you see the pop-up press conferences, the ones that are like, oh, there's a terrorist attack, get the press conference stuff out, we got to condemn terrorism, I'm not even mad at you. Do that. But let me point out the hypocrisy one more time. Sisters and and brothers, we cannot condemn terrorism only when the acts of terrorism are against non-Muslims. We cannot have selective outrage on loss of humanity, sisters and brothers. For me, when a white Christian is killed, I'm just as outraged when a Muslim is killed, when a Jew is killed, sisters and brothers. So if you want to be in the business of condemning terrorism, you better quit your job, because there's a lot of loss of innocent life happening every single day. And when you look at terrorism from the perspective of the national, right? Because we already know what that means. When you hear terrorism, God forbid anybody else commits terrorism, because only Muslims do that, right? The biggest group of victims of groups like ISIS and Al-Qaeda and Boko Haram are Muslim sisters and brothers. So if you want to condemn terrorism, you condemn all terrorism against all people, including your Muslim sisters and brothers. That, sisters and brothers, shows the integrity of our community. It shows the dignity of our community and the consistency and the sanctity of life that is upheld in our religion as Muslims. So when you start projecting to the rest of the world that somehow our deen, our religion only cares when non-Muslims are killed, what kind of message are you sending to people? That's why people devalue our lives, because we don't even value our own lives. So start thinking about that, sisters and brothers, what you are projecting, and who are you talking to when you talk about condemning terrorism? Who do you hope is reading your message? Who are you trying to help? Whose thoughts are you trying to formulate? If you want people to know how consistent, how much dignity and integrity and respect we have in our community, then you have to be mourning lives in Paris, in Beirut, in Iraq, and you know what? Yes, lives like Mike Brown's in Ferguson and like Tamir Rice in Cleveland, Ohio. I'm sorry, sister, I get passionate. I'm trying to make sure I say all the things.